All right, y'all. So this is a really big message that I've been tapping into. It's about a collective conscious expansion that we're going through, and this is an interesting one because this did not have to happen through force. This happened through awareness, and I feel like something within the collective has shifted. Something has clicked. Something turned on. All right, and it was kind of like out of nowhere. You just started noticing yourself, and I do want to start by saying I feel like the collective I'm speaking to was already very self aware, but only to a certain extent. And I feel like that self awareness is now expanding. Okay. You're starting to notice your thoughts, you're starting to notice your emotional patterns and your reaction to things, right? You're starting to notice how your emotions are making you feel in the body, even how your body's responding to certain energies, to certain people, to certain environments, right? It's almost like you stepped out of autopilot for the very first time again. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. So, this really does feel like a collective that is learning how to observe themselves instead of immediately becoming consumed by every emotion that passes through them. With the hangman, this is when you're called into a perspective change, right? This is when the universe is trying to show you something different. Even your consciousness, even trying to show you something different, right? With the lantern right here. And I feel like you're realizing, like, wait a minute, I don't have to become this emotion, or I can witness it and I can understand it and I can move through this consciously. I feel like there's something that happened that triggered you, right? I feel like there's something that happened that kind of rattled up your emotions, and it's something that you knew had to be dealt with, something that you weren't able to just dismiss, right? When we don't allow our emotions to process through, when we don't allow our triggers to process, that becomes stuck energy in the body. And I feel like somebody is allowing this to move through them. And this really does change everything because I do feel for a long time, many people process life unconsciously. And when I say that, I mean like processing your emotions unconsciously, processing your triggers unconsciously. Yes, you are very self aware, but this shift has brought on an entirely new perspective of the way that you move through, let's say, I don't know, shadow work. Okay, we could say that. So, this is meaning what I do mean by that is something would trigger you and you would instantly become that trigger. Like, unconsciously become that trigger. You became that anxiety. You became the fear. You became the defensiveness and the sadness. And what I mean by you became is you allowed that anxiety and that fear and defensiveness to expand outside of yourself and to take hold of your energetic field. And now this is the energy or the frequency that you were radiating. Okay. You have very powerful energy, which is why this awareness is so important. Okay. It's so important. So kudos to you for making this shift, but now instead of becoming that fear, anxiety, and defensiveness, now you have space. There is an awareness between, the feeling and the reaction. And that space is so sacred. And that space is really where this transformation happens, because now you're starting to realize that your emotions are not punishments, they're information. Okay, you're sitting through them. Your emotions are really messengers. They reveal where your healing is needed with this Queen of Cups. They reveal where you're resisting something, okay? They reveal where your soul is really just trying to guide you into expansion. And I feel like this collective is beginning to understand that conscious expansion is not always about becoming higher, but sometimes it's, conscious expansion. Sorry, I can't talk today. It's about becoming more honest with yourself, about becoming more aware or more emotionally intelligent, even more connected to your internal world. And this really does feel like a collective that's learning how to feel their way through transformation rather than thinking your way through it. And that is so important because I feel like some of us have tried to intellectualize our healing for years. We tried to psychoanalyze our emotions, right? We tried to logically think our way through shadow work or through healing, when really we're being asked to feel our way through this. Um, because healing is not always logical. Most of the time, healing is not logical. It's hard to put your healing into words. But transformation is really energetic. That is so important for you to understand. And there are some things that your soul understands before your mind truly catches up with it. Okay. The Queen of Cups is someone that can feel her emotions before she's able to explain them. And this expansion, it feels deeply connected to what I would say, I would call emotional alchemy, right? And what I mean by that is, instead of suppressing your emotions, or instead of projecting your emotions or escaping them, you're learning now to transmute them. If there's anyone who is a powerful transmuter of energy, of emotions, my bad, it's this Queen of Cups. She's the one that sits in this Queen of Cups, King of Cups, even. But she's the one that sits in her emotional world, even when it's uncomfortable, because she knows that her emotional world, her waters, they must be kept clear, because your emotions are what sends signals out to the universe. And that's what the universe responds to. Um, and most people, they run from themselves. Most people don't even sit in that discomfort long enough for the wisdom to reveal itself. And you see how she's sitting here holding this, we're going to call this work. We're going to call this one of her emotions. She's sitting with that. And doing so, she's allowing it to expand. She's watching this process happen. All right. And most people, they distract themselves before this awareness can fully arrive. They set them to the side. They say, I'll get back to it. Or they put a boundary up. They deflect the situation. But you, I see that you're being strong enough to sit through the discomfort. And and it has allowed you to really um, witness your own process. And this is a really cool thing to do, because instead of instead of becoming all of those things, the emotions and all of that, this process, it starts to unfold differently now that you're aware of it. It's more gentle, it's a little bit more natural, it's unfolding a little bit more beautifully, because your awareness, it softens resistance. There's some saying or something like, when you pay attention or notice or put your focus onto like an object, it starts to change, right? And I feel like that's what's happened with your process. It can't unconsciously move through you anymore because you are aware of it. Now you can allow it to unfold naturally. And it's like the moment you become conscious of a pattern, that pattern begins losing unconscious control over you. And I keep hearing like it finally makes sense now. Like, oh God, I get what I'm going through. Like there's been such a relief. And some of you you're realizing that certain emotional cycles, they weren't there to destroy you. They were there to teach you how your energy works. The Queen of Cups understands how her energy works. The Temperance understands, and the Hangman and the Star, all of these cards right here are masters of their energy. All right. They're masters of their process. And you know, you started to learn how your energy works, how your nervous system works, how your intuition speaks to you, how your body is communicating with you, right? And now that you have this awareness, you can work with yourself instead of against yourself. And that really is it's about to change your entire reality, because once we have an internal expansion, the law of correspondence says an external expansion must follow. So you've unlocked something great within you, something big, and you're about to watch your world change right in front of your eyes. And it's like the moment your internal world shifts, your external reality, it begins to reorganize itself around your new level of awareness. And so what that means is your relationships, your conversations, your boundaries, your desires, your priorities, all of these things, they start to change. Even the environment that you tolerate being in, it starts to change, because once your consciousness expands, you cannot comfortably shrink back into this old version of yourself. And I feel like this is a collective that is currently in that transition. I feel like you have just recently experienced something that triggered you, something that riled your emotional state, something that you had to deal with. Okay. And I feel like you're becoming more intentional with your energy. more intentional with your thoughts, your emotional responses, and intentional really with what you allow into your field, not just externally, but what you project into your field, from your emotional state, from your thoughts, right? You're becoming more aware and intentional about that. Excuse me. And it's like because of that, your reality is beginning to mirror the evolution back to you. This Queen of Cups again, I'm going to circle back to her being this mirror type of energy. And some of you, you may have noticed that people are responding to you differently. Maybe some of your connections, they may feel distant now. Some opportunities, they may even, start to appear seemingly out of nowhere. But this is because your inner state has shifted. And some of you may be called to create, to speak, to express yourselves differently. I feel a lightness coming in this energy with the star right after. Once we are able to push through a process, once we're able to allow it to transmute itself, once this alchemizing, takes place, you kind of like push through this sludgy, heavy energy through your channels, through your system, through your energetic field, and creativity and love and joy and higher states of being can start to be expressed because you've kind of cleared the plumbing. Let's say that. And some of you just might be called to express yourselves differently. Maybe you feel a little bit more free, and that's because your inner frequency is changing. And when your frequency changes, your reality has to recalibrate. And this feels like a collective that is entering a phase of deep self-trust. And I just love that for you because n- not because you suddenly know everything, like it's not like that, but it's more so because you're finally learning how to listen to yourself. You're learning how to feel yourself. You're listening to your emotions without drowning in them. And, you can hear your intuition without immediately doubting it. Um, and I feel like you are really listening to your body instead of overriding it. Okay. And this is really a conscious way of living. And it honestly feels like many of you are realizing that awareness itself is so healing, just because or just being able to lovingly witness yourself and to give yourself that grace, without shame, without the harsh judgment, or without trying to force yourself into perfection, you know because healing was never about becoming emotionless. It was about becoming conscious enough to move through those emotions with wisdom. And I feel like the collective is understanding that now. Like you're realizing that emotions are just energy in motion, which means you are not supposed to stay stuck or let an emotion be stagnant within your being. You have to let it flow. You have to let it process itself, okay? And that's again why many of you are starting to feel lighter because the more conscious you allow yourself to process these emotions, the less trapped that they stay stored within you, and you just feel clearer. I feel like you're more emotionally balanced. And this isn't because like life just suddenly became perfect or anything, but it's because you stopped resisting your own internal process and now we're working with it. And I really feel like someone standing in front of a mirror, but for the first time, you're not criticizing yourself. You're observing yourself and you're understanding yourself and you're starting to have more compassion for yourself. And that's such a beautiful thing. This is a massive spiritual shift that you're going through, this conscious awareness that you have expanded. Excuse me, because self awareness without self love, it can become self destruction. If we don't have that self love while we are self aware, we can start to psychoanalyze every emotion. We can start to restrict ourselves from being authentic, from truly expressing ourselves. So I think it's absolutely beautiful that you are having this compassion for yourself, right? That you're becoming self aware without being self destructive. So there's a fine line. This spiritual awakening and this ascension it's not for the weak. All right. When you ask for the healing, you have to let the healing do its thing. Okay. And I also feel like a lot of you are beginning to understand how powerful your perception truly is, because um, once your consciousness does expand, you start to realize that your reality is deeply influenced by the lens through which you view it. So maybe once where you were viewing your healing process through a negative lens or through a distorted or a wounded lens, now it's much more clear. It's balanced, okay, with this Queen of Cups and this Hangman and the Temperance, okay? And a lot of you changed that lens, okay? A lot of you changed that lens intentionally. And a lot of you just, that shift just occurred out of nowhere. You know, you may have been just sitting there on the couch feeling your feels, and you're like, wait, like, what the hell is going on? Like, I was unaware that I was letting this affect me. Like, my heart is beating fast. You know, I'm all riled up. I'm having this mental chatter back and forth in my head for no reason, when really just sit there and allow that emotion to process itself through your system. And you stopped viewing yourself as being broken. You know, you started viewing yourself as evolving. You're like, hey, you know, this is okay for me to be experiencing this, because once I come out, I'll be out on the other side. You know, you stopped viewing your emotions as weaknesses, and you started viewing them as guidance, because that's really what they are. You stop viewing difficult experiences as punishment, and you start to recognize them as a catalyst for your awakening. And that shift in perception, and that shift in your perception alone, it can change your timelines. And that's really what I see is happening for someone, because awareness creates choices, and those choices, they create transformation. And I feel like this is a collective that finally became aware enough to interrupt those old cycles before they fully played out. So, like, sometimes we'll be going through something, you know, we'll be going through the healing process, and we can project that out onto other people, or we can put up a boundary where one may not be needed, because it's not the person outside of you, it's the emotion inside of you that makes you want to put that boundary up. You know, so it's important that we do sit with ourselves, as to not ruin relationships, or to speak out of character, or to do something that we may later regret due to our emotions taking control unconsciously. But this is where I see someone has changed, is because you are now in control. You're in the driver's seat of your healing process and your emotions. And this is mastery. This is some big shit. You know, this is a collective really that has leveled up. And I feel like spirit really wants this collective to understand that this is only the beginning. Okay? Because once awareness activates, your entire life begins to unfold differently. You know, it's more conscious, it's more intentional, more authentic even. And you're no longer sleepwalking through your reality. You are participating in your evolution. And a lot of you, I feel, you know, are finally realizing that the greatest transformation was never outside of you. It was the moment you became aware of yourself, right? The moment that you began witnessing your own mind, your emotions, and your energies, but with consciousness. And that was the moment everything started to change. And I feel like this is a collective that's stepping into a beautiful new chapter, all because you changed your awareness, because your awareness is expanding. So, congratulations to you. If you have recently gone through something that was triggering, maybe you're in the middle of this, maybe this video is your confirmation, maybe this video is the awakening happening for you. But wherever you're at in your journey, you know, let me know. Let's start to engage on this channel. I'll be putting out at least 3 to 4 videos a week. Just tapping into the collective, because there's so many shifts that are happening like everywhere. We're going through so many different evolutions and changes and ego deaths, and all of this cool stuff is just happening to us, right? So we can do it together, okay? And I'd love for you to be a part of my community. So just like and subscribe, share the video if you feel called, and I look forward to making the next video for you all. I love you. Bye.